back to my channel. I'm Rachel, the owner and creator here at the Eclectic Cottage in Spokane, Washington. Happy Sunday, everyone. I hope you're having a great weekend so far. For today's video, I only have one project for you, but it's kind of like three different little projects all rolled into one. And it's one of those that I found inspiration for when I went down the rabbit hole on Pinterest the other day. So I hope you guys like it. And without further ado, let's get to today's project. I mentioned in my last video that I had been on Pinterest and gone down a bit of a rabbit hole looking for inspiration for Valentine's Day projects. I came across one that I kind of liked. It was a candle tray that they had used some wooden hearts on, and I am doing a version of that starting with this metal sign that I've had in my stash for quite some time. For the sign, I am hoping to get a bit of crackle, so I am going over the spray paint with Sweet Pickins milk paint in the color of the month, which is this beautiful farmhouse white called Flour Sack. I did not add any extra bond to my paint, but for this project, I did let my spray paint dry completely before going in with the milk paint. Once I had my first coat down, I did go over it with my hairdryer, but I was careful to not get too close with that heat. I really don't want any chippiness in this project. I could tell once my first coat of paint was completely dry that I was going to get some good crackle, and I was kind of excited, but I did have to go over it with a couple more coats of Flour Sack just to get good coverage over that dark brown color. While the sign portion was drying, I moved on to the artwork I was going to be adding to the middle. I'm going to be using these little wooden heart plaques that I picked up at the Dollar Tree a while back. I needed to peel off all of the stickers first, and these guys were really, really rough. So I did take some 150 grit sandpaper and just kind of went around the edges and over the top to make them just a touch smoother. I didn't want any splinters sticking out anywhere. I knew I wanted to decoupage a couple of these hearts, and when you're decoupaging, it's always a good practice to have a nice light color under your decoupage paper so that your images really stand out well. And since I was doing the other two, I went ahead and did the third one as well. So I'm just putting a really good base coat on all three of these hearts, and I'm using DIY's Cottage color called Plaster. The beautiful thing about the Cottage colors is that they have a built-in sealer, so I don't have to worry about my decoupage medium reactivating my paint and having any bleed through. Once my base coat was dry, it was time to start the decoupage process. For my medium, I'm using DIY's clear liquid patina, and I'm going in with a relatively thin coat over just the face of the heart. At least I was doing my best to just keep the medium over the face. And then I misted my paper just a bit. This helps to release those fibers so that the paper stretches out nicely and goes down smoothly. Then I kind of smoothed it out with my fingers. And once I had that done, I went in with another good coat of the liquid patina over the top. And I'm kind of using my paintbrush to help smooth out any wrinkles or air bubbles as I brush that medium over the top. And this paper is called Wallpaper. It's by Roycycled Treasures, and it's one of my absolute favorites. I do happen to have one piece of it left in my web shop at www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com if you would like to have some for yourself. Once my decoupage medium was completely dry, it was time to remove the excess decoupage paper. For that, I'm using some 150 grit sandpaper, and I'm trying to sand as best I can in kind of a downward motion. This process ended up being a little more challenging than I'd hoped because, of course, some of the medium had gotten onto the routered edge, so some of the paper was stuck down in areas I really didn't want it. So I just had to go very slowly and carefully with that sandpaper, trying my best not to rip the decoupage paper so that I could remove all of that excess. Once I'd finished removing the excess decoupage paper from my hearts, I realized I really wanted more of a bold color around the edge. I also wanted something that would match really well with the roses in the decoupage paper. And although DIY paint has a ton of beautiful colors, there really wasn't a good match that was right out of the bottle, so I mixed my own. For my custom color, I mixed mostly Marquee, which is a beautiful rich red, with just a little bit of Petticoat pink by DIY. And this color almost exactly matches some of the colors in the decoupage paper, which is what I was going for. And then once I was finished with the edges of the two decoupage hearts, I went ahead and painted the third heart with this custom color as well. When I was looking around on Pinterest, I saw some signs that had Sola wood flowers on them, and I really liked that look, and I decided I wanted to kind of replicate it on this sign. So I mixed up three colors. The first one is the rest of the custom color that I had created. I added a little bit of liquid patina into it just so that it would have some sort of a sealer, and then I added water. The second color is vintage pink by DIY. It's one of the Cottage colors, so it already has a sealer in it. And then the lightest color is Plaster, which is also one of the Cottage colors. And for each of these flowers, I'm just taking it and dipping it into its respective color, just making sure I submerge it completely and then just pull it out very carefully and set it aside to dry. Then it was back to my wooden hearts. I still needed to seal the DIY paint that I had put on them, so I'm going in with liquid patina on those just so that the entire heart has the same finish on it, and I'm just putting a really liberal coat over everywhere that I had painted. I wanted the middle heart to be a little bit more decorative, so I grabbed out a piece of muslin that I had laying around and I ripped out a strip. I trimmed it up a little bit because it had little hairs sticking out everywhere. And then I cut it to length and I glued it to the front of my heart using some hot glue. And then I grabbed out a set of stamps I have. It's just the alphabet, all uppercase letters, and I spelled out the word love. I'm just putting that on a piece of backer board, making sure my letters are all straight and that they're stuck down really well. And then I'm going to ink that up with some StazOn ink, and I'm going to stamp that right onto my little piece of fabric. So I'm just pressing down the letters, trying to go over each one with my fingers. When I pull this up, I did realize that I had missed the edge of the E a little bit. So I just re-inked that and I carefully placed it right back down where it was and went over it again with my fingers to make sure I had a better impression. Now, I love lace for Valentine's Day, so I decided to add just a little bit to this heart as well. So I am just cutting out a piece of lace to length and using my hot glue gun to glue that onto the heart. Now that my little wooden hearts were completely finished, I moved back to working on the sign itself. I still needed to seal it, but before I did that, I wanted to do a little bit of distressing. So I'm taking some 220 grit sandpaper and going over the whole thing. I did have just a couple little areas of chippiness, but not enough that it really made any kind of difference. But I am going over the entire thing to just try and get some of that brown to show through in places. I also cleaned up the back really well. Don't worry, I did go back in and washed it up a little nicer, and I removed the Goodwill tag as well. Once I was happy with my distressing, I wiped everything back down with a damp shop towel, and once it was dry, I went in with some DIY clear wax to seal up my Sweet Pickins milk paint. I'm just going over the entire sign with a good even coat of that, and once I have that down, I'm just going to go over it with a dry shop towel to wipe off the excess clear wax. Now, once I'm finished with this, I'm going to go in with a good coat of DIY dark wax. This will sink into all of the details and really add a beautiful patina to the sign. And it also really helps to accentuate the crackle that I have going on this sign. So I'm just, again, putting a nice even coat of that all over my sign. And then I'm going in with that dry shop towel again to wipe off the excess. Now, as I was wiping back the dark wax, I realized my sign was just a bit darker than I really wanted it. So to fix that, I'm going to take my clear wax brush and I'm going to go back over my sign with that clear wax. This will act somewhat like an eraser and help to lighten up that dark wax. I did this a couple of times until I was happy with how my sign looked. Finally, it's time to put everything together. I started by placing my measuring tape over my sign so I knew exactly where center was. And then I added some Titebond to the back of the first heart, followed by a little bit of hot glue just to make sure it stayed in place while that Titebond cured. Then I moved on to the other two hearts using the same procedure, just adding some Titebond, spreading that out with my finger, and then adding a little bit of hot glue so that they stayed in place. For my final touches, I'm going to be adding a little bit of ribbon and of course my Sola wood flowers that I dyed earlier. For the ribbon, I'm making a little lasagna ribbon. I took some strips of flour sack cloth. Some of them I had dyed with coffee. Two of them I actually dyed with the same solution I used for the darker flowers and added bits of lace in between. And once I had my stack made, I went ahead and folded it in half, and then I used a piece of jute to tie around the top, making kind of a tassel. Once I had my little tassel tied nice and tight, I cleaned up the jute and then I used a little bit of hot glue to add it to the bottom corner of my sign. Then I grabbed 3 flowers, one of each color, kind of played with them until I figured out exactly how I wanted them to look, and then I used the hot glue to glue them into place. I did the same thing at the top left of my sign, adding 3 more of the little flowers, and then my sign was complete. I absolutely love the way that this little sign came out, and I really hope you guys like it too. Well, that is it from here for today, you guys. I hope you liked my project and I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up. I so appreciate that. And if you haven't already, I would absolutely love it if you would subscribe to my channel and then just hit the little notification bell so you don't miss anything. And then of course, don't forget to drop a comment below and let me know what you thought of my project for today. Just a quick reminder too, I do carry a full line of DIY products, both here in my shop and on my website at www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com. I carry DIY paint and products as well as the Sweet Pickins milk paint and products, some Roycycled Treasures decoupage papers, and of course some Redesign with Prima. For Thursday's video, speaking of Redesign with Prima, it is going to be the reveal of the new Redesign with Prima release that's coming out on the 29th. So it will be all about all of the beautiful new things that are coming, they'll all be available on my website on the 29th at 8 a.m. So I hope you can join me back here for that on Thursday. Until then, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your weekend and beginning of the week. Thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate it, and I will see you back here on Thursday. Bye.